Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Love After 60, the podcast where we celebrate that beautiful, terrifying, complicated truth. It's never too late to find love, lose it, or discover you never really knew what it was in the first place. I'm your host, and I have some news. Starting today, we're doing something different. For months, you've been sending me your stories, letters, emails, voice messages, tales of heartbreak and healing, of chances taken and chances missed. And honestly, your stories are so much more powerful than anything I could script. So from now on, I'm reading your stories, the real ones, the messy ones, the ones that keep you up at night. If you have a story to share, and I know you do, please send it to us. Every story matters. Every love deserves to be told. Now, before you hit that subscribe button, before you send us that thumbs up, let me tell you about today's letter. It came from a woman named Lorraine Tesler. She's 67 years old, lives in Portland, Oregon, and her letter began with 8 words that made me read it 3 times. I'm getting married to my husband's best friend. I know. I know what you're thinking. But trust me, this isn't what it sounds like. Or maybe it's exactly what it sounds like, but not in the way you'd imagine. Lorraine's husband died 4 years ago. The best friend? He lost his wife 6 years back. And the secret that binds them? Well, it's been buried for 41 years, hidden underneath decades of dinner parties and Christmas cards, family barbecues and shared vacations. A secret so carefully guarded that even now, as Lorraine prepares to walk down the aisle at 67, she's terrified of what it might mean to finally tell the truth. So while you're settling in, maybe pouring that second cup of coffee or pulling your car into the driveway, let me read you Lorraine's letter. Every word of it. Because some stories can't be summarized. Some truths can only be told slowly, carefully, the way you'd handle something precious and breakable. Here's what Lorraine wrote. Lorraine's letter. Dear host, I'm not sure why I'm writing to you. Maybe because you're a stranger. Maybe because I'm 67 years old and I've spent 41 years keeping a secret, and I'm tired. So tired. I'm getting married in 3 weeks to a man named Vernon Caldwell, and I need to tell someone the truth before I do. Vernon was my husband's best friend. I know how that sounds, but my husband, DeWitt, we called him Dewey, died 4 years ago of pancreatic cancer. Vernon's wife, Imogene, died 6 years before that. This isn't an affair, at least not in the way you might think. Let me start at the beginning, because I think that's the only way this will make sense. Part 1. How we all met, 1981 to 1984. I met Dewey Tesler at the Lane County Fair in Eugene in August of 1981. It was one of those perfect Oregon summer evenings when the light turns golden and the air smells like funnel cakes and hay. I was 24, working as a receptionist at Dr. Henshaw's dental office on Willamette Street. Still living with 2 roommates, Cheryl and Diane, in a cramped second-floor apartment on Pearl Street that smelled perpetually like burnt popcorn and someone else's cat. Not our cat. We never figured out where that smell came from. I'd gone to the fair with Cheryl, mostly because she'd just been dumped and needed someone to help her eat her feelings in the form of elephant ears and ride the tilt-a-whirl until we both felt sick. We were standing in line for corn dogs when this man walked past carrying an enormous stuffed panda bear, and Cheryl elbowed me so hard I thought I'd cracked a rib. "Look at him," she whispered. "That's the kind of man who wins giant pandas for women." He was broad-shouldered and tan, wearing a faded Levi's shirt with the sleeves rolled up. And he had this gentle, slightly embarrassed smile, like he wasn't quite sure what to do with a 4-foot stuffed animal in public. His dark hair was a little too long, curling at his collar, and he had carpenter's hands, the kind that looked like they could build a house or fix anything that broke. That was Dewey. I didn't meet him that night, but I thought about him for weeks afterward. That smile, those hands, that ridiculous panda bear. Then in late September, he walked into Dr. Henshaw's office with a swollen jaw and an appointment he was 20 minutes late for because his truck had broken down. I was at the front desk, and when he stumbled in, apologizing profusely, I recognized him immediately. "Panda bear guy," I blurted out before I could stop myself. He looked confused, then laughed, which made him wince because of his tooth. Lane County Fair, I explained, feeling my face turn red. You were carrying a giant panda. His whole face lit up. My niece's birthday present. I'm Dewey, DeWitt Tesler. But nobody calls me that except my mother when she's mad. Lorraine Ashford, I said, and that was it. That was the beginning. He asked me out before he left that day, after his tooth was fixed, his jaw numbed with Novocaine, so he sounded like he was talking through cotton. Would you have dinner with me? If you're not dating someone? If you'd want to? Maybe Friday? I said yes. We went to this little Italian place on 5th Street. He was nervous. I was nervous. We both ordered spaghetti and then felt self-conscious eating it. But somewhere between the breadbasket and dessert, the nervousness melted away, and we talked for 3 hours straight. About everything, about nothing. Dewey worked in construction, framing houses, building decks. The kind of hard physical labor that left him exhausted every night, but satisfied in a way he couldn't quite explain. He'd grown up in Coos Bay, helped his father build fishing boats as a teenager, came to Eugene for community college and never left. He wanted to save enough money to buy land someday, build his own house with his own hands, raise a family in a place where his kids could see the stars at night. He was genuine in a way I wasn't used to. The men I dated before were all angles and agendas, always trying to impress me or get something from me. Dewey was just Dewey. Straightforward, kind. What you saw was what you got. We were married in June of 1982, 9 months after that first date. It was a small wedding at my parents' church in Cottage Grove, just family and a few close friends. My mother cried through the whole ceremony. My father, who'd been skeptical at first, shook Dewey's hand afterward and said, "Take care of my girl." And Dewey looked him straight in the eye and said, "I will. I promise." His best man was Vernon Caldwell. Vernon was a few inches taller than Dewey, lean and angular where Dewey was solid, with wire-rimmed glasses that were always sliding down his nose, and a way of speaking that made everything sound like poetry. They'd been roommates at Lane Community College, improbable friends who'd bonded over late-night philosophy debates and a shared love of fishing. After graduation, Dewey went into construction, and Vernon got his teaching certificate, but they'd stayed close. The night before the wedding, at the rehearsal dinner, Vernon gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. He talked about the first time he'd met Dewey, how they'd been assigned as roommates, and Dewey had shown up with a truck full of power tools and fishing equipment. And Vernon had shown up with nothing but books and a typewriter. "I thought we'd kill each other within a week," Vernon said. Instead, he taught me how to fix things, and I taught him how to talk about his feelings. We've been fixing each other ever since. Vernon brought his girlfriend to the wedding, Imogene Pruitt. She was petite and dark-haired, with these bright hazel eyes that always seemed to be laughing at some private joke. She taught second grade at Camas Ridge Elementary and had this way of making everyone feel instantly comfortable, like you'd known her for years instead of minutes. She wore a lavender dress to our wedding, and I remember thinking she looked like a flower. Imogene and I became friends immediately. Not the casual surface-level friends you make at parties, but real friends. The kind who call each other at midnight when they can't sleep, who know each other's fears and dreams and embarrassing stories. Within 6 months, we were having lunch together twice a week. Within a year, she and Vernon were engaged. They got married in April of 1983, and this time, I was the one crying through the ceremony. Dewey was Vernon's best man again. I was Imogene's maid of honor. At the reception, the four of us danced until our feet hurt, and Dewey leaned over and whispered in my ear, "We're lucky, are we? To have this, to have them?" "Yes," I said. "We're so lucky." For a while, that was true. We really were lucky. The four of us fell into this easy rhythm. Friday night dinners that rotated between our houses. Imogene and I would cook. Dewey and Vernon would do the dishes, and we'd play Trivial Pursuit or Scrabble until someone got too competitive and the board got flipped. Saturday morning hikes in the Cascades, where Dewey and Vernon would argue about politics and environmental policy, and Imogene and I would walk behind them, rolling our eyes and picking wildflowers. We took vacations together. Camping trips to Crater Lake, road trips to the coast, one memorable disaster of a ski weekend where none of us actually knew how to ski, and we spent more time falling down than standing up. We celebrated birthdays and holidays. We were there for each other through job changes and family emergencies, and the ordinary ups and downs of building adult lives. We were happy, all four of us. I believed that completely. And then came the summer of 1984. Part 2. The summer everything changed. In early June of 1984, Dewey got offered a contract in Spokane, Washington. It was a big job, a commercial building, 6 weeks of work, more money than he usually made in 3 months. The kind of opportunity he couldn't turn down, even though it meant being away all summer. "Come with me," he said the night he got the offer. We were lying in bed in our little rental house on Harrison Boulevard, and he was tracing circles on my shoulder, the way he always did when he was thinking. We could make an adventure of it. Find a little furnished apartment, explore a new city. "I can't," I said, and I meant it. I'd just been promoted to office manager at the dental practice. Dr. Henshaw was finally trusting me with real responsibility, and the summer was our busiest season. I couldn't just leave for 6 weeks. Dewey understood. He always understood, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. He left on a Monday morning in mid-June. I woke up at 5 to make him breakfast and pack his lunch, and we stood in the driveway for 10 minutes, just holding each other. "It's 6 weeks," he said. "That's all. I'll call every night. I'll come home on weekends if I can." "I know," I said. "I'll be fine. I love you, Rainy." That was his nickname for me. Rainy. Like I was something fresh and clean and necessary. "I love you too." And then he drove away, and I stood there in my bathrobe, watching his truck disappear down Harrison Boulevard, and I felt this strange little flutter of something in my chest. Not quite fear, not quite loneliness, just something. That first week was awful. The house felt too big and too quiet. I couldn't sleep without Dewey's steady breathing beside me. I ate cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row because I couldn't be bothered to cook for one person. Work was busy enough to distract me during the day, but the evenings stretched out long and empty. On Friday night, Vernon called. "Imogene and I are making dinner," he said. "Lavanya, come over. We're not letting you eat cereal alone on a Friday night." I laughed. "How did you know about the cereal?" "Because I know you, Lorraine. Come over." So I did. I drove to their house on 24th Avenue, a little craftsman bungalow with a porch swing and Imogene's flower garden out front, zinnias and cosmos and black-eyed Susans, all blooming in riotous color. Imogene met me at the door with a glass of wine and a hug that lasted just a beat too long. "Dewey called Vernon," she said quietly. "He's worried about you. Said you sounded sad on the phone last night." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "You're not fine. You miss him. That's okay. That's normal. That's good, actually. It means you married the right person." She pulled back and looked at me seriously. "But you don't have to be alone. We're here. We're your people, too." The evening was lovely. We ate lasagna and garlic bread and salad from Imogene's garden. We drank too much wine. We played Scrabble, and Vernon won by putting down quixotic on a triple word score, and Imogene and I accused him of cheating even though we knew he wasn't. It felt normal. It felt good. It felt like exactly what I needed. On Saturday morning, Imogene's mother called. She'd fallen down the stairs at her house in Boise, broken her hip, was in the hospital facing surgery. Could Imogene come? Could she come right away? Of course she could. Imogene was packed and in the car within an hour, still wearing her apron from making breakfast. Vernon drove her to the airport in Portland. She kissed him goodbye at the departure gate and told him she'd probably be gone a week, maybe longer depending on her mother's recovery. "Take care of Lorraine," she said, loud enough that I heard it from where I was standing with their luggage. "Don't let her spend the weekend alone." "I won't," Vernon promised, and he didn't. That afternoon, he called and asked if I wanted to come over and help him weed Imogene's garden. "She'll kill me if I let her flowers die," he said, "and I have no idea what I'm doing. I can't tell a weed from a zinnia. I went over. We spent 3 hours in the garden, pulling weeds and deadheading flowers and watering everything within an inch of its life. Vernon made us sandwiches for lunch. We sat on the porch swing, eating and talking. And it was easy, comfortable. He told me about the book he was teaching his summer school class, The Great Gatsby, and how most of his students thought Gatsby was romantic instead of tragic. I told him about the disaster patient we'd had that week, a man who'd insisted we were trying to poison him with fluoride and demanded we use holy water instead. We laughed until our sides hurt. "Stay for dinner," Vernon said when the afternoon started fading toward evening. "I'm just gonna grill some chicken, nothing fancy, but I hate eating alone." I should have said no. I should have gone home. But I hated eating alone too, and Vernon was my friend, and there was nothing wrong with two friends having dinner together while their spouses were away, right? We grilled chicken and corn on the cob. We sat on his back deck with another bottle of wine. When had we started drinking wine together so easily? And watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. We talked about our marriages, about Dewey and Imogene, about how strange it felt to be 27 and 29 years old and already settled into this very grown-up life. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd made different choices?" Vernon asked. He was leaning back in his chair, his glasses reflecting the sunset. "If you'd gone to different schools, taken different jobs, married different people?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "But then I think I wouldn't have what I have now. I wouldn't have Dewey. I wouldn't have you and Imogene. And I can't imagine that." "Neither can I," Vernon said quietly. And the way he said it, there was something in his voice, something I'd never heard before. The sun went down. The sky turned from purple to dark blue to black. The wine bottle was empty. We should have said goodnight. I should have driven home. But we didn't. We just kept sitting there in the darkness, and the silence between us changed, became heavier, became charged with something I didn't want to name. "Lorraine," Vernon said finally. His voice was rough. "I need to tell you something." "Don't," I said, because I knew what he was going to say, and I knew that once he said it, everything would change. "I have to. I've been carrying it too long." He turned in his chair to face me. I could barely see him in the darkness, just the shape of him, the glint of his glasses. "I'm in love with you. I have been since the night I met you at your rehearsal dinner. And I know that's terrible. I know it's the worst thing I could possibly say, but I can't pretend anymore. I can't sit here with you and pretend that this is just friendship when it's so much more than that." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. "Vernon, I love Imogene," he continued, and now his voice was breaking. "I love her so much. She's my wife, and I made promises to her, and I meant them. But that doesn't change how I feel about you. And I think, God help me, I think you feel it too." I did. I'd been feeling it all evening, maybe all week, maybe since the first time I'd met him and he'd made that toast at my wedding. This pull toward him, this connection that felt deeper and more dangerous than simple friendship. "We can't," I whispered. "Vernon, we can't. Dewey is your best friend. Imogene is my best friend. We can't do this to them." "I know," he said miserably. "I know. That's why I've never said anything. That's why I've tried so hard to keep my distance, to be just your friend and nothing more. But tonight, sitting here with you, I just can't pretend anymore." We sat there in the darkness, not speaking, not moving. I could hear my own breathing, fast and shallow. I could hear Vernon's breathing too, equally unsteady. I should have left. I should have walked to my car and driven home and never spoken of this again. Instead, I reached across the space between our chairs and took his hand. His fingers closed around mine and the world tilted. "Just tonight," I heard myself say. "Just this once, and then never again. We go back to being who we're supposed to be." "Are you sure?" Vernon asked, and I could hear in his voice that he was terrified, that he was hoping I'd say no, that he was hoping I'd save us both from this mistake. But I didn't say no. What happened next? I can't tell you. I don't remember, because I remember every detail. The way Vernon's hand trembled when he touched my face, The way we couldn't quite look at each other when we moved from the deck to inside the house. The way we both kept stopping, kept asking, "Are you sure? Are we really doing this?" The way we ended up in the guest room instead of his bedroom, as if that somehow made it better. As if betraying our spouses in a different bed made it less of a betrayal. It wasn't passionate. It wasn't wild. It was sad and desperate and tender. Two people reaching for something they shouldn't have, knowing, even as it happened, that it was the biggest mistake of their lives. Afterward, we lay there in the darkness, not touching, and I felt like I'd swallowed broken glass. My chest hurt. My throat hurt. Everything hurt. "What have we done?" Vernon whispered. "I don't know," I said. And I didn't. I had no idea how to live with what we'd just done. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the guest room staring at the ceiling, listening to Vernon not sleeping in the room next door. And I replayed every moment of my life that had led to this. Every choice, every turn, trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong, when I'd become the kind of person who could betray the man she loved. When morning came, too early, too bright, too real, Vernon was already downstairs making coffee. I found him in the kitchen, looking as wrecked as I felt. His hair was sticking up on one side, his glasses were crooked. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "This can't happen again," I said, before he could speak. My voice came out harsh, harder than I meant it. "Vernon, this was a mistake. It can never, ever happen again." "I know," he said. He wouldn't look at me. "Dewey can never know." "Never," Vernon agreed. "And Imogene can never know," Vernon said, and now there were tears running down his face. Actual tears. God, Lorraine, what did we do to her? What did we do to him? I didn't have an answer. There was no answer. I left an hour later, drove home, and took the longest shower of my life, scrubbing my skin until it hurt, as if I could wash away what we'd done. Then I stripped the bed even though I hadn't slept in it, put fresh sheets on, cleaned the entire house from top to bottom, trying to make everything normal again, trying to pretend that 24 hours ago I'd been a faithful wife. When Dewey called that night from Spokane, his voice warm and familiar and completely trusting, I nearly vomited. "How was your weekend?" he asked. "What did you do?" And I lied. I lied so smoothly, so easily, it terrified me. "Oh, just quiet. I worked in the garden a little. Had dinner with Vernon and Imogene on Friday." "Good," Dewey said, satisfied. "I'm glad they're looking after you. Vernon's a good friend." "Yes," I said, my voice steady, even though my hands were shaking. "He's a very good friend." Part 3. The Long Aftermath, 1984 to 2019. Imogene came back from Boise 8 days later. Her mother's surgery had gone well, and her sister had come from Seattle to help with recovery, so Imogene could finally come home. Vernon picked her up at the airport, brought her back to their house on 24th Avenue, and the four of us went right back to our Friday night dinners and Saturday morning hikes. Except everything was different now. Vernon and I couldn't look at each other, couldn't sit next to each other, couldn't be alone together even for a moment. We were too careful, too polite, too aware of every word and gesture. When we spoke, our voices were unnaturally formal. When we accidentally touched, passing a serving dish, reaching for the same door handle, we both jerked back like we'd been burned. Dewey noticed. Of course he noticed. A month after he came back from Spokane, he asked me if something had happened between me and Vernon, if we'd had some kind of fight or disagreement while he was gone. "No," I said, and the lie came so easily I almost believed it myself. "Why would you think that?" "I don't know. You're both just different around each other, distant, like you're walking on eggshells." He was watching me carefully, his kind brown eyes confused. "Did Vernon do something, say something that upset you?" "No, Dewey, I promise. Everything's fine." He wanted to believe me. I could see it in his face. He wanted so badly to believe that his best friend and his wife were fine, that the strange tension he was sensing was all in his imagination. So he did. He believed me, because Dewey trusted people. He trusted me. That was the first time I understood what we'd really stolen from him. Not just fidelity, not just one night, but trust. the ability to take people at their word, the ability to believe that the people he loved were exactly who they seemed to be. Life went on, because what else could it do? Dewey and I bought our first house in 1985, a little ranch-style place in the Santa Clara area with a big backyard and an apple tree. Vernon and Imogene helped us move in, and we spent that whole first weekend painting walls and hanging pictures and arguing about where the furniture should go. Imogene made lasagna, the same lasagna she'd made that night, the night before everything changed, and the four of us sat on our new back deck eating off paper plates, exhausted and happy. Well, Dewey and Imogene were happy. Vernon and I were pretending. In 1986, I got pregnant. It wasn't planned. I'd been on the pill, but I'd had a stomach flu, and apparently that was enough. When I took the test and saw those 2 pink lines, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried for an hour. Dewey found me there and held me and asked what was wrong. Did I not want this? Because we didn't have to do this if I wasn't ready. I'm terrified, I told him, which was true, but not for the reasons he thought. I was terrified because every time I looked at that positive pregnancy test, I thought, what if? What if the timing was wrong? What if this baby isn't his? I counted back the dates obsessively, over and over, doing the math in my head until my brain hurt. The baby was conceived in early July. Vernon and I had been together in mid-June. It was impossible. The timing didn't work. This was Dewey's baby. It had to be. But the fear ate at me anyway. Irrational, impossible fear. Our daughter Marianne was born in March of 1987. She had Dewey's dark hair, my green eyes, and absolutely nothing of Vernon in her features. I cried when they put her in my arms, partly from relief, partly from joy, partly from the overwhelming guilt that I doubted, even for a moment, who her father was. Dewey was a wonderful father, patient and gentle and completely devoted. He built Marianne a crib with his own hands, sanded it until it was smooth as glass so she couldn't get splinters. He woke up for night feedings without complaint. He sang to her in this soft, off-key voice that made her stop crying immediately. Vernon and Imogene came to visit in the hospital. Imogene brought balloons and a stuffed elephant. Vernon stood at the foot of my bed, looking at Marianne in Dewey's arms, and his face was so carefully blank, I knew exactly what he was thinking. "She's beautiful," Vernon said. "She looks just like Dewey." "Yes," I said, meeting his eyes for the first time in months. "She does." After that, something shifted. Not back to normal. We could never be normal again. But to something bearable. Vernon and I found a new equilibrium. We could be in the same room without that terrible electric tension. We could speak without our voices going strange. We could even, occasionally, laugh together. We became the people we were supposed to be. Friends. Just friends. Nothing more. Or at least we pretended to be. Imogene got pregnant in 1988. She was over the moon, kept touching her belly like she couldn't believe there was a baby in there. She and I went to prenatal classes together. I was pregnant with my second daughter, Carolyn, by then, and we'd compare notes on morning sickness and strange cravings and how terrifying it was to be responsible for another human being. "I'm so glad we have each other," Imogene said one afternoon as we were leaving our class. We were standing in the parking lot, both of us enormous and uncomfortable in the August heat. "I feel like we're doing this together, raising our kids together. They're gonna grow up like siblings, Lorraine. Isn't that amazing?" "It is," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, despite the secret I carried, despite the guilt that never quite went away, I was grateful for Imogene. She was my best friend, the sister I'd never had, the person I could tell anything to, except the one thing I could never tell. Imogene had a son. They named him Marcus. He was born in February of 1989, 2 months after Carolyn. He had Vernon's lean build and Imogene's dark hair, and these huge brown eyes that saw everything. The 5 kids, Marianne, Carolyn, and Marcus, grew up together just like Imogene had predicted. They trick-or-treated together every Halloween, hunted Easter eggs together every spring, built blanket forts in our living rooms, and played elaborate imaginary games that only they understood. They were best friends, the way their parents were, the way their parents pretended to be. The years passed. Marianne started school, then Carolyn, then Marcus. They lost teeth and learned to ride bikes and join soccer teams. Dewey coached Marianne's softball team. Vernon helped Marcus with his English homework. Imogene and I volunteered in their classrooms, chaperoned field trips, threw birthday parties that got more elaborate every year. We took family vacations together, camping trips to the coast, road trips to Yellowstone, one memorable disaster to Disneyland, where everyone got food poisoning and we spent half the vacation in the hotel bathroom. We celebrated every holiday together. We were there for each other through promotions and layoffs, sick parents and family drama, the ordinary crises of middle-class American life. From the outside, we looked perfect. Two happily married couples who'd been friends for decades, whose children were growing up together, who built this beautiful, stable, intertwined life. And mostly, we were happy. I really do think we were happy most of the time. But Vernon and I, we carried that secret like a stone. Some days I could almost forget it. Months would go by when I wouldn't think about that night, when I could look at Vernon and see just my friend, just Dewey's best friend, just Marcus's father. Other days, it was all I could think about. I'd watch Dewey and Vernon standing at the grill together, laughing over beers, and I'd think, I betrayed him. I betrayed both of them. I'm a liar. I'm a fraud. There were moments, not many, but enough, when Vernon and I would accidentally make eye contact across a crowded room, and I'd see it in his face. He was thinking about it too, remembering, regretting, wondering if things could have been different. But we never spoke of it, not once in all those years. We made a silent pact that night in June of 1984, and we kept it. The kids grew up. Marianne went to the University of Oregon, studied environmental science, met a boy named Tyler who was sweet if a little boring. Carolyn went to Portland State, studied art history, came out as gay when she was 20, and brought home a girlfriend named Jamie who made her laugh. Marcus went to Reed College, became a high school English teacher just like his father, married a woman named Kendra who taught chemistry and was probably too smart for all of us. Dewey and I became grandparents. Marianne had twins, Sophia and Emma. Then Carolyn and Jamie adopted a little boy from foster care and named him Leo. Our house filled up with toys and sippy cups and the chaos of small children again, and it was wonderful. Vernon and Imogene became grandparents too. Marcus and Kendra had a daughter named Iris, who had Imogene's eyes and Marcus's serious temperament. We were in our 50s now, then our 60s. Our hair went gray. Dewey's knees started hurting from all those years of construction work. Vernon got reading glasses. Imogene and I started talking about retirement, about traveling, about all the things we'd do when we finally had time. We'd made it. That's what I thought. We'd made it through. The secret was buried so deep now, covered by so many years of ordinary life, that sometimes it felt like it had happened to different people. Younger, stupider people who didn't understand what they were risking. And then Imogene got sick. Part 4, loss, 2019. In March of 2019, Imogene found a lump in her breast. She didn't tell anyone at first, not even Vernon. She told me later that she'd been in denial, that she'd convinced herself it was probably nothing, that she'd deal with it after Marcus's daughter's birthday party, after the spring musical she was directing at her school, after this, after that. By the time she finally went to the doctor, it was late April. By the time she got the biopsy results, it was May. Stage 3 breast cancer, aggressive, already spreading to her lymph nodes. I was with her when she got the diagnosis. We were sitting in Dr. Morrison's office, those awful fluorescent lights humming overhead, and the doctor was talking about treatment options and survival rates and clinical trials. And Imogene just sat there nodding, like she was listening to someone explain how to change a tire. Afterward, we sat in my car in the parking lot for an hour. Neither of us could figure out how to move, what to do next. Finally, Imogene turned to me and said, "I need you to promise me something." "Anything," I said, and I meant it. "If this goes bad, if I don't make it, I need you to take care of Vernon. He's going to fall apart. He won't know how to function without me. Promise me you'll be there for him." My throat closed up. Don't talk like that. You're going to be fine. The doctor said the treatment. Promise me, Lorraine. Her hand gripped mine so hard it hurt. You and Dewey, you're the only real family he has. Marcus will be there, but he'll be grieving too. Vernon will need you. Promise me. I promise, I whispered. She started treatment immediately. Aggressive chemotherapy, then radiation, then more chemotherapy. Her beautiful dark hair fell out in clumps. She lost weight until she looked like a shadow of herself. But she never complained, not once. She showed up to treatment with lipstick on and jokes ready, made the nurses laugh, brought cookies for the other patients in the infusion room. Dewey, Vernon, and I took turns driving her to appointments. We organized a meal train for the family. We sat with her during the long hours of chemo, reading to her or watching movies on an iPad or just holding her hand while she slept. Vernon was destroyed, absolutely destroyed. He took a leave of absence from teaching and barely left her side. He slept on a cot next to her hospital bed during the bad stretches. He learned to give her injections, change her dressings, manage her medications. He aged a decade in 6 months. For a while, it looked like the treatment might work. The tumors shrank. Her energy came back a little. She even went back to teaching part-time in the fall, insisted she needed the normalcy, needed to feel useful. But in December, she started having headaches. Terrible, blinding headaches that no amount of medication could touch. The cancer had spread to her brain. After that, everything happened fast. More radiation, seizures, confusion. Days when she didn't recognize us. Days when she was perfectly lucid and talked about all the things she still wanted to do, places she wanted to see, as if she couldn't see that time was running out. She died on February 14th, 2019, Valentine's Day. Vernon was holding her hand. Marcus was on the other side of the bed. Dewey and I were in the corner of the hospice room, trying to give them space, but not wanting to leave. The last thing she said, she opened her eyes and looked right at Vernon and said, "I had the best life with you, the absolute best. Don't waste what's left of yours being sad." And then she was gone. The funeral was standing room only. Imogene had taught elementary school for 37 years. She'd touched hundreds of lives, thousands probably. Former students came, some of them in their 40s now with children of their own, to say goodbye to the teacher who'd made the love reading or helped them through their parents' divorce or just made them feel seen. I spoke at the service. I'd written something the night before, sitting at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning, trying to find words big enough to contain what Imogene had meant to me. I talked about the 36 years of friendship, about how she'd been the sister of my heart, about how she'd made everyone around her better just by existing. I didn't talk about the secret. I didn't talk about that night in June of 1984, but standing at that podium, looking at Vernon in the front row, his face gray, his hands shaking, I felt the weight of it crushing me. She died never knowing. Dewey would die never knowing. We'd gotten away with it, and I'd never felt more like a thief in my entire life. After the funeral, Vernon disappeared. Not literally, he was still in his house. Still answered the phone when we called. But the Vernon we knew was gone. He stopped teaching, stopped going out. When we visited, he'd be polite but distant, like he was watching us from very far away. Dewey tried everything. He showed up at Vernon's house with groceries, with projects they could work on together, with fishing gear and hiking boots. "Come on, man, let's get out of here. Let's do something." But Vernon just shook his head. "I can't. Not yet." "When?" Dewey asked. "When will you be ready?" "I don't know," Vernon said. "Maybe never." Dewey was terrified. I'd never seen him so scared. "He's going to die," Dewey told me one night. We were lying in bed, and I could hear the panic in his voice. "He's just going to waste away in that house. He's going to give up." "He won't," I said, trying to sound sure. "He just needs time." "How much time? How long do we wait before we admit he's not coming back?" I didn't have an answer. Months passed. Spring turned to summer, summer to fall. Vernon's house fell into disrepair. The lawn overgrown, the gutters clogged with leaves. The flower beds Imogene had loved turning into weeds. We'd go over and try to fix things, but Vernon barely seemed to notice. And then, in November of 2020, Dewey started having stomach pains. Part 5. Another loss, 2021. At first, Dewey thought it was just indigestion. He'd always had a sensitive stomach, but the pain got worse. He lost his appetite, started losing weight. Finally, in January of 2021, I dragged him to the doctor. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, inoperable. 6 months, they said. Maybe 8 if the chemo worked. Maybe longer if we were lucky. We weren't lucky. When we told the girls, Marianne collapsed, just completely folded in on herself, sobbing so hard I thought she might break. Carolyn went quiet and still, the way she always did when things were bad, her face like stone. When we told Vernon, he looked at Dewey for a long time and then said, "No, not you two, not both of you." "I'm sorry," Dewey said, and somehow he was the one comforting Vernon, even though he was the one dying. "I'm so sorry, buddy." Vernon took care of Dewey the way he'd taken care of Imogene, showed up every day, drove him to appointments, sat with him during chemo, read to him when he was too tired to watch TV, helped me manage his medications, his pain, his fear. It was Vernon being there that pulled him back into the world. Taking care of Dewey gave him purpose again, made him get up in the morning, made him remember that there were still people who needed him. The last few weeks were awful. Dewey was in so much pain, even with all the morphine. He couldn't eat, could barely speak, but he was still himself, still present, still trying to take care of everyone else, even though he was the one dying. 3 days before he died, Dewey asked to talk to Vernon alone. I was in the bedroom with him, and he looked at me and said, "Rainey, could you give us a minute? I need to tell Vernon something." My heart stopped. Did he know? Had he figured it out? Was he going to confront Vernon now, at the end, after all these years? But I just nodded and left them alone. I stood in the hallway for 20 minutes, my ear pressed to the door, trying to hear what they were saying. But their voices were too low. Just a murmur of words I couldn't make out. When Vernon came out, his eyes were red. He looked at me and said, "He wants to see you now." "What did he say?" I asked. "What did you talk about?" Vernon just shook his head and walked away. I went back into the bedroom. Dewey was crying, actual tears running down his face, which he almost never did. He'd cried at our wedding, when our daughters were born, when his mother died. That was it. Dewey didn't cry. "What's wrong?" I asked, rushing to his side. "Are you in pain? Do you need more medication?" "No," he said. "Come here, sit with me." I sat on the edge of the bed and took his hand. It was so thin now, all bones and papery skin. He'd lost so much weight, he barely looked like himself anymore. "I just told Vernon something," Dewey said. His voice was weak, raspy from the tumor pressing on his organs. "Something I needed him to know before I go." "What?" "I told him thank you for being my friend, for being there for you when I couldn't be, for taking care of our family." Dewey squeezed my hand, and I told him something else. "What?" I was barely breathing. "I told him that after I'm gone, if something happens between you two, if you find comfort together, I'm okay with that. I want that. I want you both to be happy." The world tilted. "Dewey, what are you talking about?" "I'm not stupid, Rainey. I've known for a long time that Vernon has feelings for you. Maybe you have feelings for him too. I don't know. I never asked because I was afraid of the answer." He looked at me with those kind brown eyes, still kind even at the end. "But I want you to know that I'm not angry. I'm not hurt. If you find love again after I'm gone, even if it's with Vernon, that's okay. You deserve to be happy. You both do." "Dewey," I was crying now, ugly sobbing tears. "There's nothing between me and Vernon. There never has been. I love you. Only you." "I know you love me," Dewey said gently. "But love is complicated. Hearts are big enough to hold more than one person. It's okay, Rainey. I'm giving you permission. Both of you." I wanted to tell him the truth. Right then, with death sitting in the corner of the room waiting to take him, I wanted to confess everything. To tell him about that night in 1984. to ask his forgiveness, to let him die knowing everything, but I couldn't. Because what would be the point? Just to make myself feel better? Just to ease my own guilt? It would only hurt him, and he was already in so much pain. So I kept the secret, one last time. I'm not going to fall in love again, I told him. You're it for me. You're my person. There's no one after you. Dewey smiled, this sad, knowing smile. We'll see, he said. Life is long, Rainey, or it should be. Don't waste yours being alone. He died 2 days later, August 3rd, 2021, 3 months before our 40th wedding anniversary. I thought losing Imogene had been hard, but losing Dewey, losing my husband, my best friend, the man I built my entire adult life around, was like losing gravity. I kept expecting to fall, but there was no ground anymore. Just this endless falling feeling that never stopped. The girls were wonderful. They moved in for a while, took turns staying with me, made sure I was eating and sleeping and not completely falling apart. But they had their own lives, their own families, their own grief to process. They couldn't fix this. Nobody could. Except Vernon understood. Vernon had been there. He knew exactly what this felt like. 3 months after Dewey's funeral, November 2021, Vernon called me. It was late, almost midnight, and when I answered the phone, his voice was rough. I can't sleep, he said. I haven't really slept since Imogene died, and it's gotten worse since Dewey. I can't be alone tonight, Lorraine. Can I come over just to sit with someone who understands? Yes, I said. Of course. Come over. He arrived 20 minutes later, still in his pajamas with a coat thrown over them. We sat in my living room. The living room Dewey had repainted just 2 years ago. The couch Dewey used to fall asleep on watching football. And we talked about everything. About Dewey and Imogene. About how strange it was to be 63 and 65 years old and suddenly, shockingly, alone. About how empty the houses felt. How wrong it seemed that the world just kept going. That people kept living their lives, laughing and planning and looking forward, when everything had ended. We cried together. We remembered together. And slowly, gradually, sitting there in the darkness with someone who understood, the falling feeling stopped, just for a little while. After that night, Vernon and I started meeting for coffee once a week. Just coffee, just talking. 2 old friends trying to figure out how to keep living when half of themselves had died. Coffee turned into lunches. Lunches turned into long walks in Hendricks Park. Through the rhododendron garden Imogene had loved. Vernon started coming over to fix things around my house. A leaky faucet, a stuck window, a door that wouldn't close properly. All the things Dewey used to handle. I started cooking dinner for both of us because neither of us could stand eating alone. And somewhere in there, so slowly I barely noticed it happening. I started looking forward to seeing him, started thinking about him during the day, started feeling that old pull again, that connection I'd spent 37 years trying to bury. I was falling in love with Vernon Caldwell. Or maybe I'd been in love with him since 1984 and just spent 40 years pretending I wasn't. Part 6, The Question, 2024. It was Marcus who said something first. Christmas 2023. All the kids and grandkids were at my house for dinner, and Vernon was there too, because of course he was, because he'd been having every holiday with us for 40 years, and nobody was gonna stop now, just because Dewey and Imogene were gone. After dinner, Marcus pulled me aside in the kitchen while I was doing dishes. So, he said, drying a plate, how long have you and Dad been dating? I nearly dropped the pan I was washing. What? We're not dating. We're friends. We've always been friends. Marcus gave me this look, patient, knowing, the same look Imogene used to give people when she knew they were lying. Mom, I'm not stupid. I see how you look at each other. I see how he lights up when you walk in a room. You're together all the time. If you're not dating, you should be. Marcus, your father and my husband were best friends. It would be... Natural? Marcus interrupted. Inevitable? The most obvious thing in the world? Yeah, it would be all of those things. He put down the dish towel and looked at me seriously. My mom died 4 years ago. Dewey died 2 years ago. You're both alone. You're both lonely. You clearly care about each other. What are you waiting for? It's complicated, I said weakly. It's only complicated if you make it complicated, Marcus said. My mom's last words to Dad were, "Don't waste what's left of your life being sad." Well, you're making him waste it. You're both wasting it. He left me standing there at the sink, hands in soapy water, my whole world tilting again. 2 weeks later, Vernon and I were taking our usual walk through Hendricks Park. It was January, cold and gray, the kind of Oregon winter day where everything looks washed out. We were talking about nothing in particular. A book Vernon was reading, a problem Marianne was having at work. When suddenly, Vernon stopped walking. "Lorraine," he said, "we need to talk." My heart started pounding. "Okay." Marcus talked to me. After Christmas, he said he'd talk to you too. Vernon was looking at the ground, his hands shoved in his coat pockets. He thinks we're already together, or that we should be. I know. He said the same thing to me. And what do you think? Vernon looked up at me finally, and there was something raw and vulnerable in his face. Do you think he's right? I spent 40 years avoiding this question, 40 years pretending the answer didn't matter. But standing there in the gray January cold, looking at Vernon, at this man I'd known for more than 4 decades, who'd been part of every major moment of my adult life, who knew every scar I carried, I couldn't pretend anymore. "Yes," I said quietly. "I think he's right." Vernon's breath came out in a visible cloud. "I need to tell you something. Something I've never told you. On the night before Dewey died, when he asked to talk to me alone, do you know what he said? He told me. He said he gave you permission, gave us permission. There was more." Vernon's voice was shaking. He said he'd known about us, about that night. He'd always known. The world stopped. "What?" He said he figured it out that summer. Said we were both terrible liars, that we couldn't look at each other, couldn't be natural together. He knew something had happened, and over the years, he'd pieced it together. Vernon's eyes were wet now. He said he decided to forgive us, that he'd chosen to forgive us and never bring it up because he didn't want to lose me as a friend or you as a wife. He said carrying that forgiveness had been hard sometimes, but it was worth it because he got to keep both of us. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't process what Vernon was telling me. Dewey had known. All these years, he'd known. And then Vernon continued. He told me that when we finally got together after he was gone, we should stop feeling guilty about it, that we paid our dues, that we deserved to be happy. He said, take care of each other, love each other, don't waste any more time. I was crying now, huge, racking sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest. Vernon pulled me into his arms and held me while I fell apart. Dewey had known. He'd forgiven us. He'd given us his blessing. And we'd wasted 2 more years being too afraid and too guilty to reach for what he'd wanted us to have. Part 7. The Proposal, December 2024. After that day in Hendricks Park, Vernon and I stopped pretending. We told the kids we were together. No one was surprised. Marianne cried happy tears. Carolyn hugged us both and said, finally. Marcus just said, about damn time. We started actually dating, going to restaurants together, to movies, to concerts, doing all the things Dewey and Imogene had never liked doing. The things Vernon and I had always wanted to try, but couldn't because it would have meant leaving our spouses behind. It felt strange at first, wrong, almost, to hold Vernon's hand in public, to kiss him goodnight at my front door, to introduce him as my boyfriend when we were 67 and 69 years old. But it also felt right, more right than anything had felt in years, like I'd been holding my breath for 4 decades and could finally exhale. We talked about Dewey and Imogene constantly, not in a sad way, but in the way you talk about people you love who shaped who you are. We told each other stories we'd never shared before. Vernon told me about the first time he knew he loved Imogene, their 3rd date, walking through the Saturday market, and she'd stopped to buy flowers from a street vendor and handed one to every person they passed. I told him about the first time I knew I loved Dewey, watching him build that crib for Marianne, the concentration on his face, the gentleness of his hands. We were trying to replace them. You can't replace 40 years of marriage, 40 years of history. We were just trying to figure out how to love again with all our scars showing. Last Christmas, Christmas 2024, Vernon asked me to marry him. It wasn't fancy. We were sitting in my living room, watching snow fall outside, drinking hot chocolate, being quietly content together the way old people do. And Vernon just turned to me and said, "Lorraine, I don't want to date anymore. I don't want to keep going back and forth between houses. I don't want to wake up alone. I'm 69 years old, you're 67, and neither of us knows how much time we have left. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Will you let me spend whatever time I have left taking care of you and letting you take care of me?" I said yes before I'd even thought about it. Yes, yes, of course yes. We got engaged on Christmas Day 2024. The wedding is set for Valentine's Day 2025, 3 weeks from when I'm writing this letter. Imogene's death day. We chose it deliberately, a way of honoring her, of bringing something beautiful out of that loss. Everyone is thrilled. The kids are planning the ceremony. The grandkids are decorating. Marianne is making the cake. Carolyn and Jamie are handling the flowers. Marcus is walking me down the aisle because it feels right, because he's Imogene's son. And this is as much about honoring her as it is about Vernon and me starting over. It should be perfect. It should be joyful. It should be everything a wedding is supposed to be. But I keep thinking about that night in 1984, about the choice Vernon and I made, about all the years we spent lying and hiding and pretending. I keep thinking about Dewey, who knew and forgave us anyway, who gave us his blessing from his deathbed, who wanted us to be happy. I keep thinking about Imogene, who died never knowing that her husband had spent 40 years in love with her best friend. Or did she know? That's what haunts me. Did she figure it out the way Dewey did? Was she carrying her own secret forgiveness all those years? Did she see the way Vernon and I looked at each other sometimes and choose to ignore it because she loved us too much to destroy what we all built together? I'll never know. And that's the hardest part. 2 weeks ago, I asked Vernon if we should tell the kids the truth, the whole truth. Not just that we'd gotten together after Dewey and Imogene died, but about that night 40 years ago. About the secret we'd kept, about the guilt we'd carried. We were lying in bed, Vernon's bed now, in his house that still smells faintly of Imogene's lavender sachets. And I finally worked up the courage to say it. Do they deserve to know? Don't they have a right to know the truth about who their parents were? Vernon was quiet for a long time. Long enough that I thought he might have fallen asleep. Then he said, "What truth are we telling them exactly? That we made a mistake 41 years ago? That we were weak for one night out of 40 years of friendship? That we've been punishing ourselves for it ever since? That we betrayed their parents?" I said. "We did," Vernon agreed. "We betrayed them terribly, and Dewey forgave us. And Imogene? I think she knew, Lorraine. I think she knew and forgave us too. She was too smart not to see it, too kind not to forgive it." He rolled over to face me. But what does it accomplish to tell the kids now? Whose pain does it ease? Because it's not theirs. They're happy for us. They want us to be together. Telling them doesn't change anything except how they remember their parents. And I don't want to do that to Dewey's memory or Imogene's. "So we keep lying?" I asked. "No, we stop lying. We just don't tell unnecessary truths." Vernon touched my face. "Lorraine, we've paid for what we did. God knows we've paid. We spent 4 decades living with guilt, keeping our distance, denying what we felt, because we were too terrified of hurting the people we loved. Isn't that enough penance? When do we get to forgive ourselves?" I didn't have an answer then. I still don't have one now. In 3 weeks, I'm going to marry Vernon Caldwell. We're going to stand in front of our children and grandchildren and promise to love and honor each other for whatever time we have left. We're going to celebrate finding love again at 67 and 69, proving that it's never too late, that hearts can heal, that second chances are real. And we're not going to tell anyone about that night in June of 1984. Maybe that makes us cowards. Maybe it makes us liars. Maybe it means we don't deserve this second chance. Or maybe it just makes us human, flawed and scarred and doing our best to build something good out of all the broken pieces. I want to believe that Dewey would understand, that Imogene would too, that wherever they are, whatever comes after this life, they know we love them. We really did, with everything we had. The fact that we also loved each other doesn't diminish what we felt for them. Love isn't finite. Hearts are big enough to hold contradictions. You can betray someone and still love them. You can make a terrible mistake and still deserve forgiveness. You can carry guilt and still choose joy. That's what I'm choosing. That's what Vernon and I are choosing together. We're choosing to believe that the 40 years of friendship and loyalty and showing up for each other matter more than one night of weakness. We're choosing to believe that Dewey's forgiveness was real, that his blessing meant something. We're choosing to believe that we've earned the right to love each other openly now. We're choosing to forgive ourselves. And if we're wrong, if this is selfish, if we don't deserve this happiness, then I guess we'll find out when it's our turn to answer for our lives. But right now, here, with whatever time I have left, I'm choosing Vernon. I'm choosing love. I'm choosing to believe that it's never too late, that mistakes don't have to define us, that second chances are possible even when we don't think we deserve them. The wedding is in 3 weeks. I have my dress, simple, cream-colored, nothing fancy. Vernon has his suit. The invitations are sent, the cake is ordered, everything is ready. I just needed to tell someone the truth first, the whole truth. Before I stand up there and make new promises, I needed someone, somewhere, to know the complete story of how we got here. So thank you for listening. Thank you for reading this letter. Thank you for letting me confess this 40-year secret to someone who isn't part of our lives, who won't judge us or be hurt by this knowledge. Maybe that's what forgiveness really is. Not forgetting what happened, not pretending it doesn't matter, but choosing to keep loving anyway, choosing to believe that people are more than their worst moments, choosing to hope that grace is real and second chances are possible, and that love, messy, complicated, imperfect love, is worth the risk. I hope you'll wish us well. I hope your listeners will too, even knowing the truth. And if you have a secret you've been carrying, if you've made a mistake you can't forgive yourself for, if you think you don't deserve a second chance at happiness, I hope our story gives you permission to try anyway. Because life is short, love is rare, and none of us are perfect. But sometimes, if we're very lucky, we get the chance to start over. I'm 67 years old, and I'm getting married on Valentine's Day. And I'm choosing to believe that's a happy ending, even with everything that came before it. Thank you for listening to our story. With gratitude, Lorraine Tesler. Well, that's Lorraine's story. Every word of it. I've read this letter probably 10 times since she sent it to me, and I'm still not sure how I feel about it. Which I guess is the point. Life isn't neat. Love isn't simple. People aren't either good or bad. We're all just doing our best with the hand we're dealt, making mistakes, carrying regrets, trying to figure out how to be happy without destroying everything around us. What do I think about Lorraine and Vernon? Honestly, I'm not sure it matters what I think, but I'll tell you what I wrote back to her. I told her that 40 years of friendship matters, that showing up for Dewey and Imogene through illness and death matters, that one night of weakness doesn't erase 40 years of loyalty and love. I told her that Dewey's forgiveness was real, that his blessing from his deathbed meant something, that he wouldn't have given it if he didn't want them to use it. I told her that regret is a prison we build for ourselves, and we're the only ones who hold the keys. And I told her that if she's found someone who knows every terrible truth about her and loves her anyway, someone who's walked beside her through the worst moments of her life, who's seen her at her absolute lowest and stayed, she should hold on to that with both hands and not let go. Because love at 67, love after loss, love that's been tested and survived, that's the real thing. That's the kind of love most people spend their whole lives searching for and never find. Lorraine, if you're listening, congratulations. I hope your wedding is beautiful. I hope Vernon looks at you the way someone should look at the love of their life. I hope your children and grandchildren fill that room with joy. And I hope that when you say your vows, you feel Dewey and Imogene there with you, smiling, blessing this union, grateful that the people they loved most in the world found their way to each other. Because that's what I think they'd want. That's what love looks like when you strip away all the rules and expectations and judgment. Wanting the people you love to be happy, even if that happiness looks different than you imagined. To everyone listening, I want to know what you think. Really. Leave a comment, send me an email, call into our listener line. Because these aren't easy questions, and I don't think any of us has all the answers. Should Lorraine and Vernon tell their children the truth? Does one night of betrayal negate 40 years of faithfulness? Can you really forgive yourself for hurting people you loved, even if those people are gone now? Does love that starts in pain and guilt deserve a happy ending? I don't know, but I do know this. Life is complicated. Love is messy. People are flawed. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is forgive yourself and try again. Maybe that's the real lesson here. Not that mistakes don't matter, but that they don't have to define us. Not that betrayal is forgivable, but that people are more than their worst moments. Not that second chances are guaranteed, but that they're possible if you're brave enough to reach for them. Lorraine is 67 years old, and she's getting married in 3 weeks, after 41 years of carrying a secret, after 2 deaths and 2 grievings and decades of guilt. After everything, and you know what? I think that's beautiful. I think that's hopeful. I think that's exactly the kind of story we need to hear, that it's never too late to choose happiness, to forgive yourself, to start over, even when you don't think you deserve it. Especially then. That's our show for today. Thank you for listening to Lorraine's story. Thank you for being here, for keeping an open mind, for understanding that life is rarely black and white. If you have a story to share, about love, about loss, about mistakes and forgiveness and second chances, please send it to us. Your story matters. Your voice matters. And who knows, maybe telling it will set you free the way telling hers freed Lorraine. Until next time, this is Love After 60. Remember, subscribe, leave us a review if you're enjoying these stories, and most importantly, keep believing in second chances, because it's never too late. Not for love, not for forgiveness, not for happiness, not ever. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And if you're carrying a secret that's weighing you down, maybe it's time to let it go.